it again. Um, Having a tough time. Let me just make sure it's recording.
It says it's recording.
Good.
The little
Thank
red
you.
dot is blinking
The little
somewhere on
red
there.
dot is
Yep.
blinking. Okay, good. Thank you for whoever reminded me of that. So this residency is a full residency. I think someone asked me that if you all have to show up to everything, and the answer is yes. And basically, it's an opportunity to sort of put in words and present what you've been working on. Now, I know, it seems like an overwhelming amount of work you've been doing, but it's an opportunity to, sort of take it for a spin, as it were, and talk it out. Sometimes when you talk it out, you kind of get different response than if someone's reading it. And of course, the only person other than me that's been reading your work probably is your writing partner. So this is an opportunity to sort of, give it a spin, get some feedback. And honestly, if we look to the rest of the semester into the fall, it's an opportunity to get some feedback that you will then bring back to your chair and say, I had this presentation, and these are the questions I got. These are the things that people thought were really cool. These are the things that people think I still need to work on. Because as you know, in the latter part of the semester, meaning in August, you're going to create a Gantt chart for what do I need to do and when am I going to do it moving into the fall. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's look at just the proposal, the mock proposal. I call this a mock proposal, but honestly, it's almost nothing like your actual proposal in the sense that this is a very planned sort of presentation. Your defense of your proposal, whenever you do it in the fall or the spring, whenever you do it, is going to be more like a conversation you have with your committee and sort of talk things through and, get new advice and see if some things still need attending to, or maybe one of your committee members would like to see something more developed, or they basically agree that you're ready to move on, but you need to tend to a couple things while you're moving on, okay? This is more like a presentation. So the idea here is to give you 30 minutes to sort of talk through the study. And what I've given you here in the preparation section is basically, if you haven't figured out, the sections of the first 3 chapters. Of course, you have to sort of whittle it down to a 30-minute presentation. And then we will spend 15 minutes talking about it. I find it's very helpful if you bring questions. As you can see here in the second paragraph of the preparation section, you still may be dealing with some things that you just haven't gotten your head around. That's okay. I mean, this is a work in progress. Bring those questions with you. Use this opportunity to ask your classmates, I'm still not sure if this is the right methodological technique I should use, or I'm still not feeling really comfortable with my conceptual framework. And together we can give feedback. Of course, in addition to your classmates will also be what I call the peanut gallery, which is faculty that are coming through. So some of those faculty might be your chair or committee member. Other faculty are just folks that are really interested in what the PhD students are doing. And again, they contribute to the feedback. This isn't like I don't want anyone to feel this is sort of like a clocked sort of panel where I'm sitting there sort of checking off if you've done your work. In a sense it is, in that it's an assignment and I want you to come prepared. But the idea here really, the mission of this assignment and this residency is to sort of get you some feedback, hear what's still on your mind or what's still troubling you, and putting it into sort of a, for lack of a better process, a PowerPoint presentation gets you to think it through and talk it out, because many of you have been sort of bogged down with the writing of it. So why don't we just stop there and let me just field any questions, and I'm going to go back and see if anyone's trying to knock down
I
the
think
door.
Lena is.
Okay, I will let her in. Thank you. And someone's in the chat saying, likewise, great to see everybody. Oh, and here's Kimmel. Okay, we're done. So now that we have Kimmel in here, I think that's everybody. There we go. So I'm going to go back to sharing. So does anyone have any questions of that part so far? Like, does anyone have grave concern about this? Is there any confusion in what we're actually going to be doing on those days, Friday and Saturday?
So we're essentially just going through these bullet points there. I mean,
Mhm.
I think what I was looking for like this last week is maybe just like a sample proposal because I've never seen a dissertation proposal.
Right.
I can't find any.
Oh, okay. That's actually a good question. Let me see if I can give you some insight. Most of the time, to my knowledge, in most fields, the first 3 chapters are what you're proposing to do. None of it's research. You know, chapter 1, 2, and 3 is not research. It's just setting up the argument for why I should do research. So in most academic programs, the proposal is, we call it a proposal, but it's really your first 3 chapters. So when you sit down again at your proposal with your committee, what your committee is assessing is, okay, has AJ made a good enough case for why he's ready to go forward and do this research? And tangentially, are we sure that he's not going to hurt anybody in the process? Like, does he have a good design? And as I always say, your chair shouldn't be sending you to defend something until you're ready. So, you all have different chairs, or for the most part. They're really, when you go to your proposal defense, it's because you're ready to go to proposal defense. The other thing about proposal defense is it's not quite as formal as your final defense. Think of it more like an intense coffee chat where you're talking about the document, you're sort of looking over, one of your committee members still has a problem with one of your methods. Let's talk it out. Let's figure it out. Do we need to keep that committee member happy? Or, your chair says, well, Haley and I talked about this, at length, and we came to this conclusion because it's a discussion. It's a discussion. For the lack of a better way to do this, because there's so many of you, I put a little bit more structure around this for what we're calling the mock proposal. You're basically talking through the first 3 chapters, but there's no such thing as a proposal separate, to my knowledge, separate from your first 3 chapters.
Okay. So for this, we're making like a PowerPoint and just presenting slides on that. Would that be what we're going to use in our proposal, or we're going to give them the first 3 chapters? I mean,
right.
I just want to know, is
Sure.
the presentation, is it just like the bullet points of what it is and I'm talking about it and they've already read chapter 1, 2, and 3 and I'm just kind of giving my
Right.
2
So
cents?
that's another good question. So we discourage spending really any time sort of talking through the proposal or the final dissertation with the committee, because the committee's already read it. So it would be like, you coming to class and I gave you an assignment to read something.
Okay.
And then I spent, 3/4 of the class going through the article and sort of making all the points of the article already made. This mock proposal is not like, this is an opportunity for you to present your work, mostly because everyone except me and your writing partner kind of has read it. So without having everyone read everyone's first 3 chapters, this is a way to sort of just throw it out there, 30 minutes. This is my study. This is where I am. Here's where the holes are. Here's where I feel pretty confident. Now let's discuss it and get some good feedback. Okay, your proposal defense is, as I always say, it's always based on the written word, both your proposal defense and your final defense. Because ultimately, and I think I explained this before, it's like when you submit an article, they don't know, in fact, they shouldn't know, that it's Guy Lo Trecchiano that wrote this article. They should just look at it and say, well, whoever wrote this article, because it's blind or double blind, they did a good job here, they did a weak job here, et cetera, et cetera. It's a non-biased review.
Okay.
It's the same sort of thing when you go to your dissertation. It shouldn't be, oh, the presentation was really good, but boy, does the writing stink. What do we do? It's really all about the writing. That's why this course is very focused on the writing first. And then we can sit back and say, now let's talk about what you've written down.
All right. That
So
was
are
really
we
helpful.
are we all attending each other's mock
Yes.
presentations?
Yes, this is a real quote unquote residency like you're used to. We sort of give you a break in residency 1 in the summer because you're only taking 1 course. But residency 2 in the summer is more like a full weekend. So yes, you're all going to be hearing each other's work. Now we have done this face-to-face before. We're not doing it face-to-face now. So we will have opportunities to utilize the technology to ask questions. It's going to help, I think, everyone. You may recall that I think it's in here. Maybe it's not in the assignment. I thought it was. I highly recommend that your writing partner serve as your scribe. And a scribe's sort of one of those people that just takes down notes so you don't have to take them down. So you can be engaged in the conversation and not have to worry about, oh, Lauren said this and Rosalind said this and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, I highly recommend that even for your defenses, both the proposal defense and also your final defense, because you will get feedback where you have to follow up. Even your final defense is sort of like an undone thing. Like, you know, everything can always be improved upon. So when you do your final defense a couple of years from now, whenever you do it, you know, your committee is going to say, oh, I'd still like to see you scan the literature one more time. I'd still like to see a table that explains, you know, how your methodology addresses the different research questions or whatever, okay? And their final assessment at your defense is, well, you failed. That's one of the possibilities. You passed with major revision. You passed with minor revision. You passed, and we basically leave it for you and the chair to sort of clean it up. And then you pass, possibly, I don't think we give distinction in our program, but you pass outright. Nobody passes outright. There's always something to do. So even after your final defense, you and hopefully only you and your chair will have to follow up on a few items that need attention. Sometimes the committee wants to see the reworked product again. And I'm going to be blunt. Most committees don't want to do that because they don't want to like continue working on your dissertation. They'd rather just turn it over to the chair and say, okay, you're the chair. Make sure that Emily follows up on all these things. And Emily and Philip, right, Emily? Will get together and say, okay, we need to do these 10 things. Emily, get to it and get it back to me in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And that's basically the completion. And in most cases, a well-prepared dissertation ends up in that sort of space. Again, final dissertation, no chair should send you till the chair knows you're ready to go. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Does anyone have a question about this assignment for next weekend?
Yes, so given that we're all at different places, I just wanted to ask how much weight should we place on these bullet points? For instance, if I'm not at my methods are not very well developed, is it okay to talk on what I have and say, this is where I am now?
Yes. I mean, you know, you've heard, all of you have heard me say to you, I want to see movement. I want to see the dial move a little bit. Say, I think by this point, we want to know that you've thought about it, at least, and that you can say, well, based on you know, my conceptual framework and the literature that I've reviewed, I'm thinking this is probably going to be mixed methods, and I might use this tool as a survey, or I might use this form of qualitative data collection. Um, I, I want to see that you've given it a little thought, even if you haven't come to a complete decision. And then also, maybe this is an opportunity for you to get some feedback from your classmates, you know, and other faculty, and say, well, you might consider doing this. So, you know, all this, you know, this summer, I purposely have not tried to create unnecessary work. That all the work you're putting in this course is to move your dissertation chapters along. But I do want to see that you've given it some thought. Some of you are much more advanced than others, and that's just a given, you know. Some of you are dealing with timelines that are a little bit different than the course, and we're trying to, you know, keep that in mind. But this is a perfect opportunity to say, you know what, I'm not sure I know what the translational nature of this study is yet. You know, I think it's this. What do you all think? You know, it's okay. I mean, you know, like, again, I've said this over and over again, I'm trying to push you out the door at the end of the semester with something in your hand that makes sense. Everything's not going to be answered. And we know that. But it's also, this isn't the semester to say, oh, I have another 6 months to think about it. That's not exactly right either. You should be thinking about it now. And that's sort of the gateway you're going to go through at the end of this semester, that you have something in your hand that's workable. So does that answer your question, Kemal?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Kemal is my twin.
Yeah.
I do have a question though.
Sure.
So in this bullet list for preparation of our PowerPoint presentation, the last 2 bullet points say proposed research procedures and research procedures.
Oh.
Could it be that the last one is the bioethical aspects, maybe?
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Sorry about that. That's an error, which I will change right now. Thank you for picking up on that. Yes, this is your bioethical considerations.
Perfect.
Sorry about
Thanks
that.
for clarifying that.
Sure. No, thanks for noticing it. Yep. Yes. Is anyone, I mean, we don't have to do this publicly, but I do want to know, is there anyone who's feeling very, that this is a premature step for them? I know sometimes students are like, oh God, I'm not ready to talk about this whole study yet.
I don't want to speak for everyone, Guy, but I do feel that based on conversations with my chair, it doesn't align with the rubric or the expectations of the assignment, because I have been asked to focus less on methods and more on other things. But now that I know I can say that at this presentation, I feel a little bit better. Yeah. For me, it's that focusing on trying to come up with methods that I may not ultimately use feels fine in a presentation, but writing it all down to turn in for a draft to you is a little bit where I get stuck, but that's a different assignment than this.
Right. And I hear what you're saying. I mean, you know, this is a very, I go through this every year, and I think this is the reason why they give it to me to teach. Every year I go through this. I don't expect that you're going to write your first 3 chapters in whatever this has been, 13 weeks to the end of the, you know, it's sort of an accelerated approach. But the method here is that with only one course, this course, on your plate, and during these 13 weeks, it's meant to get you focused enough to at least start to figure out, what could this be? And of course, your chair may have you sort of on a totally different sort of trajectory, and that's actually to be expected. that's why we can manage to get all of you through at different rates of development. But I do think, and I think especially the methods are the one thing that are tested with the most scrutiny at defense. So it's okay not to feel totally comfortable, but it's not okay not to give it any thought. I think it's important at this point that you start to piece it together a little bit. It may not be a very robust chapter completely, but it shouldn't be a blank page at this point. That's my feeling. Hallie, does that sort of speak to what you're saying?
Yes.
I'm in the, and I'll, you're not alone in that, Hallie. I actually am very much looking forward to presenting kind of where I am in like the form of a talk. I feel it's unusual for me personally to write prose before spitballing ideas with groups.
Right.
So you're not the only one, Hallie, but I
It's
see
a
the
little-
merit of this, and it's
Yeah.
nice to have the prose. It's just it's atypical for me. So I'm looking forward to giving a talk, and I think what I'm hearing you say, Guy, is that this is a venue for us to say things like, here are some of the considerations that I'm wrestling with.
It's a safe environment. It's a
Right.
safe environment. You can say exactly what you're thinking or feeling or whatever, of course, within 30 minutes, and know that we can talk about it. And we can say, have you thought of this? Or have you, done this? Or I really think you're onto something and you should, jump both feet in. It's not exactly a casual conversation, only because there's a lot of you and we need to sort of get through all of it. And you can't exactly take us through your study in 10 minutes. I mean, that's just not possible. So it has a structure to it, but that's really more for logistical purposes. But, and the idea of writing things out before you've thought them all through, what I have found, again, in my own experience, is we can wait for you, for any of us, including myself, to think through something till the cows come home. But honestly, until you just say, I wrote a sentence, now I wrote a paragraph, now I wrote a page, you won't move. I mean, people tend not to move. Now, that doesn't mean you won't go back and edit it to death 10,000 times. You will. But if we always wait till we feel totally comfortable with putting something down on paper, we get stuck. We just slow down. We don't, it sort of becomes sort of this insecurity. It's like, well, it's like, we don't work on typewriters anymore, those of you who are older. We work on computers. Everything, delete, change it, update it, go back and rethink it. It's all okay. But the point of this course, and it's a slightly unusual course because many PhD programs don't even give you this course. They sort of say, okay, while you're taking your comps and while you're finishing up your coursework, figure out a time that you're gonna work with a chair and put all this together, and when you're ready, you're gonna do a defense. What we try to do is provide you with some very focused time where you have no other course distractions and you can sort of spend the summer just sort of shaping it like a ball of clay, But Julie, you bring up a really good point. This is a safe space on residency weekend. It's not, and by the way, you might get challenged by some faculty, which is the reason why we invite faculty. People you don't even know, saying, I really like the way you frame this study, but can you explain to me why you chose this and not the other? Well, that's exactly what will happen at your defense. You're going to be asked, why? Why did you choose that? Or why this question? Why so many questions, research questions? Why not do solely a qualitative study? Why does it need to be mixed methods? And that's the defense part. It's okay as long as you have an answer. If you have no answer, then it's sort of like, that's just how I felt that day. And that's not defendable in the true sense.
I think that actually is what I'm looking forward to the most now that I hear you talking about it, because I would echo, and you and I have talked about this as well. I echo the previous comments, is that I'm definitely like, things are constantly evolving, and I've been using this summer more as like a practice in the writing and trying to understand the pieces than actually what my proposal will actually be in the fall. So I actually love the idea of presenting, especially to people who I haven't presented to before, who will actually challenge and ask the questions to get me thinking in a new direction, which is exactly what I think I need. So I think that sounds incredibly valuable. And for me, it's going to be a really great use of time.
And you're going to have people who don't even know you. Like for instance, one of the people who always likes to come, because she just likes to come, is Kathy Toma. Now, someone who's working with Kathy, I forget.
I have been working a lot with Kathy. This is Lena, and Kathy will be there. Kathy is part of my committee.
Oh, good. Okay. So Kathy Toma's. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lena.
And then Andrea, I think, isn't she your chair or so?
Yeah, she's my chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's your chair, right?
Yeah.
So she's a good example. She doesn't know you all. You didn't have her in class. All she knows is what you're presenting to her. And by the way, she's really great. She's not going to be a stickler, but she may say, "I'm really fascinated by the fact that you didn't consider this theoretical framework. Have you given it any thought?" And that's what happens at defense. You know, you defend it. You say, well, no, I didn't even know that existed. Or I thought about it and I chose not to use it for reasons A, B, C. Or yes, I considered it greatly and my chair and I talked about it. We just didn't think it fit for reasons X, Y, Z. That's what a defense is. And your committee and readers, ultimately, that's their job. It's to ask you these sort of testing questions, which is why they call the whole thing a defense. But you don't need to be worried about this for next weekend. Next weekend sort of mock. It's pretend. You know, it's let's see what you got and let's talk about it, and hopefully you learn something from the experience. You're going to, and let me go to the next assignment, which I think will give you some insight if you haven't looked ahead.
Guy, can I ask a really quick question relevant to
absolutely.
what just came up? Can we, because people will be kind of dropping in, can we use this as like as a pitch if we're still looking for a committee member?
Well, I think, well, usually, honestly,
speed dating? Like, can we just be very honest about that?
Well, let me tell you what has happened. I'll be very, that's a good point. Vinaya Murthy, who's from cohort 2? 2. 2 or 1, Landria? Was she in your cohort?
No, she was in 2. She wasn't in 1.
She's
She's one above us, yep.
So she had this really cool idea. And it was to, some of you, I may have told you about this. Her dissertation, she would like to focus on translation of health knowledge in African-American male barber environments. And those of you who know anything about barbers, you know, they're basically health professionals. I mean, try to get your license as a barber. It's almost harder than it is to get one to be an OT, right? But then also you have this cultural factor where in the African American community, you know, salons and barbershops and nail places are like where information exchanges, okay? So she was very sort of reluctant about this project. Now, me with my anthropological background and Ron Shope thought this was like the coolest thing. We're like, this is like she wanted to do an ethnography, and she was very sheepish about it. And both Ron and I stepped up and said, we'd like to really work on this. This is a cool study. You know, it's a little out of the ordinary, but both Ron and I have the background. At one point in my PhD, my minor was actually African diaspora, and Ron has a lot of experience in ethnography like I do. So to answer your question, there was an opportunity where the faculty sort of got perked up and said, what a cool study. I'd love to help you on this. Now, they didn't say it at this event, but if you get a really strong positive reaction from a faculty member, I would email them and say, hey, whoever, Dr. Shope, I noticed that you had a really strong interest in this, and I'm really looking for a methodologist. Would you be interested in working with me on my committee? So I wouldn't go out of your way to make a sales pitch. I think that was Julie who asked, right?
Oh, yes, that was me.
Usually. But it is interesting how it sometimes works out where when you tell the story of your study, there might be a faculty member on the other line who has a particular interest. Since that time, I was her chair, but since that time, because I've gotten a little overloaded and she took a leave, she's actually now going to be working with Robert Turner, which is actually a good move because Robert does a lot of work with African-American male health. So it's actually been a good thing. But my point here is, yes, this is why now we're starting to say, okay, it's not just a conversation between your profs and you and your classmates. Now we're going to open up the conversation so that you're talking to, you know, what I've always said, you're our junior colleagues. You're no longer just our students. You're moving into the research realm. So we can now have scholarly conversations with you because each of you knows more about your topic right now than me or just about anybody else because you're so, you know, you're so deep into it at this point. So our relationships actually change a little.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Okay, before you move on to that next assignment, I have a question too, also about this assignment. So from what I've done so.
Which one, Emily? The last one?
The presentation.
3? Okay, let's go back there. Okay, go ahead.
So chapter 1 is essentially a summary of chapters 2 and 3 in a lot of ways. So I'm just looking at it and seeing like theoretical foundation being on here twice. And I'm wondering, are there differences that we should be thinking about or?
Sure.
You know, I know we focus a lot in knowledge translation on theoretical foundations and conceptual frameworks within the literature, and then obviously that would be different than theoretical or conceptual frameworks for our study, or how would you like us to address that?
So you're right in that chapter 1, you know, the ethos of chapter 1 is it's sort of like this Cliff Notes. It's sort of a synopsis of the study. Now, it doesn't get into a whole lot of depth in chapter 1 about, you know, the methods or the literature. You know, it sort of gives us, I always say, if you handed me chapter 1, I should be as interested in the study than if I read all 3 chapters, because it sort of gives us the high altitude view, okay? When you move into chapters 2 and 3, it's the lower altitude view where you have to be much more specific. So if you recall from Terrell, the book that you've been using, when you get to the recap of the theoretical conceptual framework in chapter 2, what you're actually doing is you're bringing the reader back to that original conceptual framework and saying, now that we've reviewed the literature, let's look at this at a lower altitude. Let's look at it more closely. And we are now informing the framework based on the literature. So as we move into chapter 3, we understand that the literature has informed greatly the way that we are understanding the framework. So I think, again, I can't remember who I tell these things to sometimes, but you know, your framework in chapter 1 is sort of elegant and simple, okay? It gets more complicated as you get into chapters 2 and 3. You start to really get into, you know, all those boxes and all those arrows and how are you going to collect the data you need to understand what this arrow going from there to there means and so forth. But in the end, you're going to get back to that more elegant sort of statement of the conceptual framework. But chapters 2 and 3, and ultimately 4, are looking at that framework saying, this is how the literature informs that construct. These are the techniques I'm going to use to collect the data I need to understand the construct. And chapter 4 is the analysis of the data that basically says, now we know what that arrow means. We know what that box means. We know what whatever your construct is. So think of 2, 3, and 4 as deconstructing and reconstructing the framework from chapter 1.
So for presentation purposes, it makes sense to me to go through this actual order in a presentation. And so would it be appropriate to sort of introduce some basic theoretical foundations that are in the literature, and then later on talk about how that's, I guess I'm still struggling with how
Yeah,
to.
I can imagine in chapter 1, and I don't remember your work exactly, but let me just make up something. In chapter 1, you're saying that your conceptual framework is a combination of different models and theories that you learned in implementation science or something, okay? Then you're going to, in your chapter 2, not only look at the literature that informs the gaps about the problem, but also the literature about the theory and those models that are informing those gaps simultaneously. So when you get to this bullet, I think that you're preoccupied with, which is theoretical conceptual framework for forthcoming study, I could almost imagine that in chapter 1, the 4th bullet is going to be your visual construct, right? The elegant one, the simple one, right? Then at the end of chapter 2, you're going to return to it and say, okay, we just had a big messy conversation about the literature and the gaps and what these theories really mean. And how does that inform that first picture? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it makes a lot of sense in the written work. It just makes a little less sense to me in a presentation.
I would just look at this as, I don't want to tell you what to do. If it were me, I would take that slide from chapter 1, put it in this slide for chapter 2, but now you're going to put the curtains on the window. You're going to say, okay, this is what this means now based on the literature. This is what this means now based on the literature. You are talking about it more from a vacuum in chapter 1, but in chapter 2, you're talking about it more actually based on the literature and the foundations of the theory that you're talking about, if you're using theory.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and again, if you're sort of still not there yet, this is your opportunity to sort of see if the spaghetti's done and throw it up against the wall. And we'll all be there to say, let's figure this out together. Let's see if we can figure this out together. That's what next weekend is mostly about.
So let's talk about a little bit about assignment 2B. What happens after that? So we submit before tomorrow.
2B, sorry. Okay. So assignment 2B is your next iteration of what you've been working on. So, you know, I realize.
Would you mind letting Lisa in?
Oops. Yep, sure. Of course. Let me.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a good reason to interrupt. Let's let Lisa in. Thank you. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, sorry. I hope you weren't waiting too long. When I share my screen, I can't see who's at the door.
Okay, no worries. Sorry,
we're going to go back now. No problem. Assignment 2, to me, is your next best try at moving it from assignment 2A to 2B. So, you know, in some cases, you know, again, some of you have been at this for quite a while. You've been working with a chair and you've been chipping away at it. Others of you have been less so doing this, but I want to see a movement from 2A to 2B. I want to see a concerted efforts. Like what does 3 weeks yield? Because I think that's how long it's been. Have you been working towards moving the dial to the next iteration? And like I said, you might not have everything of every part completely figured out, but you've all been trained well enough to be able to conceptualize something for each of these sections. And what I mean by that is you all had methods courses, you've all had courses that have supported some idea that you had either in teamwork or in implementation or in knowledge translation, whatever the case may be. You have within you the ability to think through some part of every one of those bullets. Even if it's not the final decision, you can still present in writing in assignment 2B the next iteration, the improved iteration of 2A.
So I have a question on that.
Sure.
Does it matter which section of the write-up the movement is in? For instance, if I expand on my literature section, my method's not too much, but a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be okay because that's where you are. I mean, what usually gets my antenna up, it's like, wait a second, this is almost exactly like 2A. There's been no movement. Of course, you're all working with a chair. And if you remember when we had our orientation to this course, I am not here to get in the way of your work with your chair. I'm here just to sort of make sure everything keeps moving, and we get you at the end of the semester with something. It would be inappropriate and I think counterproductive actually for me to step in and say, no, I don't want you working on your literature review right now. If that's what your chair is telling you to do, I need you to work on your, it's a very hard thing for me to reconcile that I'm not your chair. I mean, I might be somebody's chair sometimes, but in this case, for this course, I am just trying to sort of carry you to the next level of work. Again, it's 13 weeks of no distraction. I mean, course distractions, you all have your normal distractions, but this is an opportunity to say, because at residency weekend, we'll also talk about the whole concept of transitioning from a course like this, where someone's saying, you have an assignment due on this date and you have to get it in, blah, 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 to completely nebulous environment, where the only person who's going to get Kemal's work done is Kemal. The only person who's going to get Lisa's work done is Lisa. You don't have Dr. L saying, you have an assignment due, you could go on for months. And it's a discipline that we're trying to transition you into.
Thank you. It's helpful.
Sure, and you will have distractions, no doubt. Okay.
So after assignment 2B, we get feedback from that one, and then do we have? I don't see like a final deliverable except for a reflection exercise.
Right. So let's talk more actually. So after this residency weekend, what's going to be happening is you're going to sort of be taking in these comments and responses that you're getting from people. You'll also, within hopefully a week's time or 2 weeks' time, you'll get my feedback from your final, your assignment 2A. But what we give you is the time to think about, okay, what do I do next? Like, how do I, oops, I'm in the wrong thing, sorry. Assignment 4, sorry, the reflective plan. what do I do next? So that's here. You'll see it's a type of organization of what you've heard. And this is where the scribe comes in and is very helpful. So say, I forget who the dyads are, but I'm looking, Kemal and Lisa, let's just say the two of you are a dyad, okay? And Kemal, you're presenting and we're getting all this feedback and you're rich in the conversation. Lisa's helping you sort of take down notes and say, okay, what's the critique? What are they saying? Oh, you need to create a better explanation of your epistemology. Okay, so she writes that there. And, you know, Rolando said this, and Guy said this, and Kathy Thomas said that, and the rationale, we might not know yet, but the rationale is something like, well, you really can't decide on a methodological approach until you really explain your epistemological outlook, right? What's the question that you're asking yourself? I need to decide what my epistemological approach is. I didn't decide that. I didn't write it down. I didn't even talk about it. Do you need assistance with that? No, I just need to like do it. Something I didn't put in chapter 3 that I need to put in chapter 3, you know? Dissertation or chapter location being affected, chapter 3. Now, by the way, it's not the scribe's job to fill this whole table out. It's the presenter's job, but your scribe can help you sort of keep track of the critiques.
Hey, Guy.
Yeah.
Just real quick. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I know you mentioned scribed a couple of times here, but this session is going to be recorded so that we can just review, you know, the recording. Right? I'm
going to try. Honestly, with these long sessions, we run into problems with spooling it. I wish I could say absolutely, like tonight, absolutely, I'm going to post it. The problem I've been having with Zoom is when I bring it over to YouTube to spool, it like overruns YouTube, but we can try. Let me just say, I typically don't record them because we're face-to-face typically, but we will absolutely give it a try.
Yeah, especially, you know, considering, you know, like just the feedback in and of itself, so much is lost, even with scribing, you know?
Yep. But I also want you to get into the habit of scribing because that's how your defense is going to work.
I got you. Okay.
So, I mean, your defense, well, actually with COVID, your defense might be virtual, depend on when you defend. But it's still typical that would not be recorded. And of course, you always have to be sure that everyone on a call is willing to be recorded. But I get your point. I get your point. We're going to try. We're going to try. But I just have a feeling that might not work as smoothly as
so, Guy, last year when we were in this situation, I know that we had requested to be a part of the cohort above us so that we could see what this looked like. And so I was just thinking maybe it would be nice to record it anyway, just so that those other
right. I have a meeting. What's today? It was supposed to be yesterday. It's now Monday to talk about how we're handling residencies, period, amidst COVID, you know. So let me bring this up because I think the other cohort has different sorts of challenges with their residency. And again, if I could completely depend on recordings like this to be fail-safe, you know, but let me talk to the other professors and see what they think about it. Part of it is we want to keep it a safe environment. You know, we don't want anyone to be sort of unexpectedly sort of just on YouTube somewhere, or I don't mean that. What I mean is just passed on to a cohort that's coming up without it being filtered somehow. So let me bring it up to Mary and Summer. And by the way, as an aside, do you all know? Has it been brought to your attention that Mary is stepping down as the program director?
Yeah, we all got an email, I think.
You did. Okay, good. I didn't. Then you know. And Summer Nasser, who will be the, there's a new structure altogether. Summer Nasser is going to be the academic program director, and Trudy Mallinson is going to be the research program. Was this all in your letter? Am I just, yes, it is, it was?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I didn't say
Yes,
it.
it would be-
I got.
It would be
Okay,
nice
good.
to know. It would be nice to know what that means for us at this level. Like, it seems to me that that might just be affecting cohorts after us, but for us at this stage,
I
we're
don't
not,
know
of
the
course.
I don't know the answer. That's actually a good answer. And just so you don't think I'm like shielding you from anything, this was sort of, I actually, because of my decanal responsibilities early in the spring semester, I just want you all to know this. I actually said I can't continue doing the doctoral candidacy thing. It was becoming really sort of problematic for me, simply because I just didn't have enough bandwidth. And so what I found out at the time was, well, that's interesting because we're going to a different structure. I said, okay, great, works fine for me. So I don't know the answers to these questions because it's new for me too. But I did want to say it's possible that Trudy and or Summer will attend as faculty members. They just haven't told me yet.
I guess that's not quite what I meant. I mean, in terms of like this stage, like at this point, let's just say Mary remained the program director. How much of a role does she really have if she's not our direct advisor or committee member or chair, aside from, you know, at some point, I know just from that lovely cover part that somebody needs to sign off on that. And so I guess, isn't it
That'll
going
be
all
that
through
for
the
all.
chair?
I don't want to give you wrong information because now that there's two program directors with different responsibilities, I don't want to give you the wrong information. I don't know yet. My hunch would be because it's research oriented, it would fall into Trudy Mallinson's lap, but don't take my word for that. I really don't know the answer. As far as who your direct sort of faculty member is going to be after this semester, it's going to be Joe Bacchino. And you will have, you know, that he will, we're sort of like concierges. He will concierge you through the next 3 semesters as your instructor of record for your dissertation coursework. And incidentally, as you saw on the calendar, on Sunday, he will come in and sort of give you sort of an orientation to what happens next, meaning what happens after you're done this summer course and as you move into, and he may even distribute the syllabus, I don't know. I'll have to talk to him before then. But I'm not trying to be vague. I don't know either. I don't know, because, you know, it's all sort of flipped on July 1. So even like Summer, I think, is working very closely with Mary about orientation, for instance, sort of like, that's probably like for cohort 5, that's probably like top of the, you know,
No, I don't think you're being vague. I think my question was more or less like, I don't even know what role Mary would have had at this point in dissertation stuff anyway, like aside from if our committee says we pass, they just sign it, right? Or I mean, do they read the whole thing too?
She still has to, she would still be the administrator that ensures that walks through. I mean, trust me, once you're doing dissertation work, everything gets a little more formal. So it all has to have, like, we have a whole system, and Joe may explain this to you on the weekend. I mean, we have a whole system of electronic signatures that have to go from person to person to person, and it actually gets a little more formal than you're used to. It's not simply your committee sitting around and saying, you'll be fine. They have to go through this process. It's instigated by, in your case, Philip. It goes to the other committee members and needs to be delivered to probably Trudy. You know, there's a structure. It's
okay,
not that nebulous.
That helps.
I just don't know what decisions have been made yet. So just so you know. Okay. I feel like we went on a tangent there. Is there any question on assignment 4?
Yeah, you were just saying that assignment 4 then comes after residency weekend. We have the information organized in this template, and it says that the desirable outcome is an actionable plan. Is that a deliverable? Like the response to every critique is the assignment.
Yeah, what we're doing is giving you a sort of template in which to get used to, because you'll have to get used to this. You know, as you work with your committee, you're going to have different people asking you for different things, saying, I'd like to see more of this. I'd like to see less of that. I would like to see you write this better. I would like to see you consider something you haven't considered. You know, one of my students, and I'm the chair for, doesn't like when I said, can you review the literature again? Because time marches on. Well, new things get published. Someone here, I think it's, who's COVID?
Me.
Yes, who's me? Is that Lorna? No. Yes, Lorna, COVID. Things are coming out every day. That's one of the occupational hazards of choosing a COVID dissertation. Things are being published every day. And, you know, one committee member said, have you read this article yet that so-and-so published out of the Cleveland Clinic? No, you need to look at that before we go the next step. Have you, you know, that's just normal. So where am I going with this? You have to come up with some sort of way to keep everyone happy. And it can be at times even conflicting, where one of your committee members is saying, please make it yellow, and your other committee member is saying, please make it blue. And you're like, okay, wait a second. And you can't, there's nobody to whine to about, this isn't fair. This is scholarship. You need to make sure that you can defend why you think it's either blue or yellow, or why you think it's both blue and yellow, or why you think it's neither blue or yellow, it's orange. That's the defense part. What I'm giving you here is just a suggestion in a way to say, okay, Dr. Van Der Eest said this today, Dr. McDonald said this yesterday. All of a sudden, out of the blue, Dr. Harwood is making a big fuss about this. It all has to be organized. You have to figure out, and that's actually what their job is in this, is to make sure that no rock goes unturned. So this is just an exercise in how you're going to cope with multiple critiques. Kemal, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me just go down here.
Okay, but then the reflective plan is the deliverable, but we don't send to you again the chapters 1, 2, and 3.
Nope. No, after next weekend, we're going to move to, and we're going a little over time, but I want to just sort of give you insight into where we're going. So for residency weekend, we are, for all practical purposes, between your submission of 2B, assignment 2B, and this mock proposal schedule, we're sort of turning the page on your written work. We're just sort of saying, okay, we did that part. Continue to work with your chairs and your committee and, you know, figure out what needs to be addressed and who, you know, who I need to go to for help, et cetera, et cetera. Then on Sunday, we're going to actually move ahead. So like I told you, Dr. Bikina will come in and sort of give you sort of like an orientation to what happens starting in the fall. Okay, and again, I haven't talked to him in a couple weeks. Hopefully he will share with you the syllabus. He may choose not to yet, but I will impress upon him that his role is to make sure that you know what comes next. Then we're going to transition to this idea of moving from being a student. You've been a student now for 6 solid semesters, where we've handed you the agenda called your syllabus. And it had dates on it, and it had readings on it, and it had assignments on it. All of a sudden, starting in August, you don't have any of that anymore. And life will get complicated, things will happen, and the only person who's really in charge of what's going on is you. And we want to unpack that a little bit. and talk about what this means when it comes to the disciplines associated with getting the dissertation done. So I'm only asking you to look at those 3 chapters from the Boyle Single book. And we'll be talking about how to set up writing routines, how to overcome writer's block, which hopefully I've sort of forced you to think about how you're going to overcome writer's block in the last several weeks, and the role of revision. You will be revising this thing for a long time, including when you try to publish it as an article or a portion of it as an article, as I've done, as other people have done. Revise, 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 revise. And we'll talk about that. Then after a short little break, and if this were a regular face-to-face, we would start a little earlier, but we're trying to make sure Hallie doesn't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we're starting a little later.
Or Lena.
Early enough, right? But we're going to—
Thank you for the inclusion. I feel very much loved.
Yeah, for those of you from the West Coast, I tried my best. So in the afternoon, the late morning into the afternoon, I have 3 of our faculty members. Some of you know them, some don't. We're just going to have an opportunity to speak with them about their dissertation story. And I don't mean their dissertation research. I mean the story of what it meant when they finished their coursework and they had to work with a chair and they had to raise their children, or they had to move, or they had to change jobs, or they had a death in the family, or whatever their story is. This is just as important as your scholarly work, because things happen. My PhD dissertation was prolonged because my mother died unexpectedly during that period of time. Those things happen. You know, they just happen. People will tell you about, possibly, I don't know every one of those stories, problems they have with their chair retired or something, you know, or whatever, you know, like this happens. And I think it's an important way to end your cohort experience, looking forward to what could be the reality as you move forward. You know, we already have faculty members that are moving in and out of our department, for instance. That is normal. It happens. You have a life change, get a divorce, have a child, lose your job. All this is a factor in how you're going to get this done. And every one of these people, including yours truly, and everyone else you've had as a professor, got it done. And there's a story that goes along with that. And I think it's important to talk about those stories. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions anonymously, so you don't have to sort of be put on the spot. And we'll figure out a way how to do that. So it might not be anonymous to me, but it'll be anonymous to them. And we'll do a Google Doc or something where you can just put any old question you're thinking about. It's like, you know, what happens if you end up not liking your chair after a couple months? Good question. What do you do? And see what they have to say about it. Okay. Any other questions? Concerns?
I put a couple questions in the chat box. I have 2 questions.
I'll look at this. Okay.
I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you what they are.
Mary sent a proposal out of.
Oh no, it's way down. My question is, should we use that reflection template as a scribe to take notes? And also, is that paper itself, the reflection, is it a table, or is it a paper, or does it matter?
The table I showed you is the deliverable.
Okay. And so should we use that as a scribe?
It's not I use the reflection, but I mean, it's sort of like, this is where I need to go. Meaning it's not a personal reflection, it's a structured reflection. There's still questions about my ontology. There's still questions about if I looked in, you know, a certain journal yet, you know, what am I going to do about it? What does it affect? I say reflection, but I mean, it's really more a self-organizing sort of thing that you're going to send as your final deliverable.
That's helpful. And as a scribe, should I use that when I take notes for Lena to put it right into that template?
Talk to each other. Just talk to each other and say, what would help you? What would help you
Okay.
best? You know, some I remember courses I've taught before, some people just went and like almost took a verbatim. Okay. Other people said, why don't you just put the bullets into the table? That would really help me. Whatever the two of you decide, and you'll be the scribe for the other person. It's so that you can have a conversation without having to say, oh, I didn't write down anything they said. How am I going to do the final assignment? Your scribe is going to help you do the final assignment by making sure that the important critiques are taken down. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
By the way, if anyone's curious, this course has gone about as usual as every other time I taught this course. And, you know, so if you're wondering, you know, we on par, are we like behind the game, are we ahead of the game? It's about typical. Some of you are ahead in your process. Some are lagging behind a little. Some of you are like, I still don't know what's translational about my study. What else is new? Not everyone always knew that in a past experience either. So don't feel that you're somehow disadvantaged. I think you have to look back and say, where was I mid-May? And where am I now? And I think you're all moving along. It's just that you might not be where you want to be. You may still be struggling. Maybe you want to be further along, you know, whatever the case may be, but it's just get you moving in this direction. Don't forget, you had comps. You had to like get over that, right? And you had to sort of recenter and focus on your study and write, and you know, so this is about normal. This is about normal. Okay, we're way over time. I'm here for as long as you need me, but it is 9:15. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Not on my side, Guy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can always write me, of course. And if you need to talk to me, you know, we can set that up too. So don't feel the pressure to perform. It should be the pressure. You should be, I said this, I think, to Monica when we spoke once. You're in competition with yourself. You're not in competition with anybody else. It's, you know, it's to get you to challenge yourself to move forward. And this is a new experience you're going to be facing for the next couple years. That's why I'm trying to sort of, you know, start your engine. This semester is about starting your engine, but you'll be driving this race for a couple years. Okay. Lauren, I'll write you in a moment.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order here? I have to still write 3 abstracts before I go to bed.
No, sir. Have a good night. Good night.
All right,
Good
you
night.
too.
Thank you.
Guy. Very helpful.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Everyone be good.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Lauren, feel free to stay on if you'd like.
I'll stay on.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Lauren's
Lena,
going to stay on. We
I
have a
envy the view.
Yeah. You know what? It has been hot though. Like this
It's
week,
been hot.
these last couple of days are good, but on the weekend it was brutal, like San Diego heat.
It was
you
hot
can't
here.
go
It was hot
anywhere.
here too on the East Coast. It was pretty bad over the weekend.
Yeah, but you can't go anywhere because everything is closed down again, and we
Of
are
course.
back under full lockdown.
I know.
So, yeah.
I know. Get used to it. This is what you get to tell your grandchildren.
And it's fine, you know. We can all handle. Our schools are closed, so they will not open up in the fall. They have already made the determination, so it looks bad in San Diego, like really bad. No. Okay, good seeing you guys.
All right, Lena.
Talk to you
Okay, take
soon.
care. Okay, bye-bye. So, I've been thinking about, because I know, I mean, you have a lot going on. And I think, so this was something I was going to propose. And it was really kind of pending on what you were able to come up with for your assignment 2B.
Yeah.
So as you heard tonight, the structure of the course is sort of like, okay, we spent 2 months writing and I got you started and continue doing that. Now we're going to shift and talk about some other things, you know. I was wondering if, based on what you wrote me regarding how you and Marcia have sort of like laid out the summer,
Yeah.
would it be helpful if you just proposed, in effect, some new dates for, so if I recall, you said that you and Marcia were kind of depending on the latter part of the summer to
Yeah.
sort of pull things together. So in
Yeah,
your
so
mind,
I go
when
back
is
to
that? When is
I
that?
the day after tomorrow.
Oh, the day after tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then so I'll have time during work to work on, like I've arranged to allow some of my time to be protected to work on this during my workday.
Oh, okay.
And because it's related to my job. So and then I also you know, as things get easier with the baby, sorry, my dog's about to knock my computer over too. As things start to get a little bit easier with her, then I will be able to
How
do some more.
about this, Lauren? How about this? You understand that the presentation next week is not a high pressure situation.
Yeah,
It's
I'm actually
meant to be.
Yeah,
it's meant to be sort of where you are.
To do that. Yeah, no, I'm quite happy to do that because I can talk about stuff all day long. I can talk about this, but hold on, Renee. Wait a second. Let me move my computer. Okay, now lay
Don't
down.
drop anybody.
Yeah. That's why I'm sitting down. Renee, lay down. But yeah, I'm happy to do the presentation because I think that'll really help. It's just like getting the.
Well, why don't you propose a new date to me? Why don't, when you are by yourself.
Can I send you what I have so far? Because I have worked on it a bit, but I'm only at like, I'm probably to where you wanted me to be for 2A at this point. And then maybe
that's what I'm saying. Why do you not stress over giving me 2B yet? Why don't you get into your routine again? And when you don't have the dog and the baby and the computer and everything, just think about it and say, I think I could update this by August 5th or something, or whatever.
Okay. Can I just send you kind of at the end of the semester? Like, because the end of the semester is like middle of August or something, then I'll send you basically what 2B should be.
Yes,
because
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'll have been back at work for about a month then. And then that gives me time to kind of catch up. Does that work?
It does work. I mean, you did just have a baby. And you know, and no, my job here is to get you to a place. If based on your arrangement with your chair and your, you know, your home situation, going back to work, if we can get to that place by just being a little more liberal on the delivery date, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Okay? So don't even worry about submitting anything tomorrow. It's tomorrow, right? Yeah, tomorrow. Don't
even,
just think about and just tell me you'll get something from me on X date.
Okay.
And I'm good with that.
I would like to email you back with where I am so far, because I want to get a grade for 2A or my little check.
Oh no, you will get a grade for 2A. So 2A and 2B are actually technically one assignment. It's like part A and part B. Okay. So when you give me your final version, it's sort of my way. It's sort of my way to make sure that people realize that you haven't made enough progress. Like, you know what I mean? I sort of withhold it and say, just so you know, I'm not thrilled because I didn't see enough progress. I want to see more progress. And so don't worry about that. Pardon me?
And so people aren't writing, 30 pages the night before it's due.
Right. I mean, no, right. And I don't mind telling you, there were a couple people that I was like, no, I'm not satisfied with the movement.
Yeah.
I want to see more movement before I give you the P, because it's a pass-fail course. It's just sort of my way to make sure that, okay, not enough, need a little more. And for you, you're going to do the same thing, except your timeline's going to be a little bit different.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
You got a lot going on, and I completely understand it. So
Okay.
we're on the same side. We're on the same side. We're not on opposing sides.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great.
All right.
Thanks, Guy. I appreciate it.
When you talk to Marcia, tell her I say hi. I never talk to Marcia anymore.
Okay, I will. I was
Yeah.
texting with her today. She's going to come to my presentation.
Oh,
next
good.
week.
Excellent. That's great. That's terrific. Good.
Can I invite somebody who is not a faculty member, or like, can I invite like an outside person who might be interested in being on my committee?
Sure, if you want to. I mean, you know,
I'm not sure if he's available, but
Yeah.
it's our director of research at the Red Cross. I'm thinking of asking
Oh,
him.
okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Sure.
all right. Okay. Thanks
All
so much. I'll
Take
see you
care of
later.
yourself. All right.
Okay.
Bye, sweetie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me see if I can make sure this got